The soft clatter of dishes and the hum of early conversations filled the cozy glow of Maplewood Diner, a quaint eatery tucked at the edge of Elm Avenue. Sunlight had just risen high enough to cast beams across the worn wooden floors, illuminating the scratches of countless years. Behind the counter, a young woman named Clara Hensley balanced a tray of hot tea cups, her movements fluid with the grace of someone who had turned weariness into poise. She was only 23, but her weary gaze and roughened hands told of a life that asked more than her age should bear. Yet, on this seemingly unremarkable morning, Clara was about to spot something so subtle yet so vital that it would reshape her destiny, and astonishingly, save a tycoon from losing all he had created. Before we go on, if you value kindness, redemption, and the impact of tiny gestures, please pause to like this story, share your reflections, spread it to others, and follow American Tailies. These stories remind us of the strength found in humanity and empathy. That day had started like any other for Clara. She'd wandered through the quiet streets of her town before dawn, bundled in a worn jacket, her breath forming clouds in the chilly autumn air. Her life was weighed down by challenges. Her father's long illness, medical bills stacked high on the counter, and her younger sister's schooling reliant on her modest earnings. Most days it felt like the world rested on her shoulders, but she pressed on, never letting hopelessness dim her resolve. Inside the diner, familiar faces filled the booths, delivery drivers stopping by, office workers grabbing a quick meal, and locals lingering over bottomless cups of coffee. Then, almost unnoticed, a man entered dressed in a simple navy suit. He seemed like any other professional, his hair lightly grayed, his shoes neat but unassuming. Few in the small diner knew he was Nathan Bryce, a billionaire magnate whose name graced the covers of business journals. He'd built fortunes in logistics, real estate, and technology. Yet here he sat at a quiet corner table, poring over a thick pile of documents with a furrowed brow. Clara approached his table, offering a gentle smile as she set down a menu. He barely glanced up, lost in the burden of the figures and contracts before him. She poured him a cup of tea, her keen eyes noticing the faint shake in his hands, not from age, but from the stress of decisions carrying millions in stakes. As the diner buzzed around her, Clara went about her tasks, but each time she passed Nathan's table, her gaze drifted to the papers spread before him. Not out of nosiness, she was too courteous for that, but out of curiosity about the man so absorbed in them. Then something caught her eye. A single line, buried in the fine print of a contract he was studying, seemed out of place. Her years of juggling bills, deciphering loan agreements, and navigating insurance forms had honed her knack for spotting discrepancies. In that moment, she saw what Nathan, his attorneys, and his consultants had missed. The contract hid a clever clause that shifted responsibility in a way that could cost him not just thousands, but potentially hundreds of millions if signed. It was veiled in technical terms, but to someone accustomed to reading the fine print of survival, it glowed like a warning beacon. Clara hesitated, torn between staying silent and speaking out. Who was she, after all, to meddle in the affairs of someone so powerful, so distant from her world? Yet her conscience wouldn't let it go. Taking a steadying breath, she returned to his table, gently setting down a plate of pancakes and bacon. Her voice wavered as she quietly noted she might have seen something odd in the documents. Nathan looked up, initially startled that a server would comment on such a complex matter. But there was no pride in his eyes, only intrigue. He slid the document toward her and asked her to show him. With a steady finger, she pointed to the line tucked deep in the legal text. Nathan's face changed as he reread it, his brow creasing further. The silence stretched so long that Clara feared she'd embarrassed herself. Then, slowly, his eyes widened with understanding. What she'd found was a catastrophic oversight, one his legal team had somehow missed. That small detail, if unnoticed, could have cost him a fortune, shaken his empire, and put countless jobs at risk. Nathan set the papers down and looked at Clara with a blend of awe and gratitude. For a moment, the tycoon and the server sat there, two worlds meeting through a single act of perception. He asked her name, wanting to know the person who had just spared him ruin. Clara, humble and almost shy, gave her name and tried to downplay her action. But to him, it was monumental. Word of the incident spread quietly. Nathan, humbled that a server had saved him millions, began to view life differently. He'd spent years surrounded by experts, advisors, and strategists, yet it was a young woman, weighed by her own burdens, who had shielded him from disaster. He couldn't overlook that. Days later, Clara came home after another grueling shift, her hands sore, to find an envelope waiting on her kitchen table. It bore a company seal she didn't recognize. Inside was an offer. Nathan had created a scholarship fund in her name for her sister's education and pledged to cover her father's medical costs entirely. More than that, he included a handwritten note, thanking her for her honesty, bravery, and sharp insight. He invited her to join his team as a junior consultant, believing someone who could spot what others missed was a talent worth fostering. Clara's eyes welled up as she read the letter, tears staining the paper. For years, she'd felt unseen, her struggles ignored, her efforts unvalued. Yet in one moment of courage, she'd not only saved a tycoon's wealth but transformed her own life and those of her loved ones. Nathan, too, was transformed. For the first time in years, he entered his boardrooms with a renewed sense of humility, aware that wealth didn't guard against errors. He shared Clara's story with his staff and colleagues, a lesson that insight can come from unlikely places and that greatness often lies in ordinary hearts. From that day, Clara's life flourished in ways she'd never dreamed. Her father received the care he needed, her sister excelled in school without the burden of unpaid fees, and Clara grew into a role where her sharp mind was cherished. Yet she never forgot the diner, the long hours, or the people who built her strength. She often returned to visit, serving tea to strangers with the same kindness, reminding herself that humility was the truest wealth. Over time, their story became a quiet legend, the day a server saved a tycoon millions, and in doing so, uncovered the boundless value of her own life. It wasn't just about wealth. It was about bravery, empathy, and the ripple effect of seeing what others overlook. And now, to all who hear this, if this story stirred your heart, please like, share, comment, and follow American Tailies. These stories are more than tailies. They're reminders of the difference one person can make, no matter how small they feel. Before we end, I have one request. Comment below, I believe small acts can change the world. Share that you were moved, and let's keep the flame of hope alive together. Because sometimes, in the quiet glow of a sunlit diner, an ordinary server holds the power to change everything.